We didn't lose that night. No positions were overrun, no bases destroyed, but by dawn, every man was exhausted, and no one could explain why. They never stayed long enough to be seen. They fired just enough to keep us awake, and before the sun rose, they were already gone. That's when I realized the truth. The enemy wasn't trying to defeat us. They were trying to decide when we were allowed to sleep. By 2100 hours on March 18, 1968, night had fully settled over the jungle west of Highway 9. Not gradually, completely. Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters. Beyond that, the terrain ceased to exist. Trails vanished, tree lines dissolved, distance lost meaning. We were a reinforced platoon, 34 men total, holding a shallow jungle rise overlooking a narrow foot trail the locals used during daylight. 2 rifle squads forward, 22 men. 1 squad in reserve, 9 men. 3 attachments, a radio operator, a medic, and a platoon sergeant. 6 men rotated through night security at any given time. No smoking, no white light, radios turned low, antennas angled flat. American units never truly owned the night in Vietnam. We tolerated it. The enemy didn't need to see us clearly. They only needed to hear us breathe. That was the first thing I noticed as commander. How loud my own men sounded once darkness stripped away confidence. Night wasn't just concealment. It was leverage. At 23:35 hours, the jungle spoke. 1 shot, then another, roughly 20 seconds apart. Not random. Measured. A forward security man from 1st Squad went down with a leg wound, through and through calf. Not fatal, but serious enough to demand immediate attention. That told me everything. Night attacks rarely begin with killing. They begin with forcing reaction. Now we had a medic moving. Radios active. Men shifting positions. No flares yet. I didn't want to light us up unless I had to. Initial enemy estimate, 10 to 15 fighters based on spacing, fire control, and sound discipline, likely broken into 2 or 3-man fire teams. They fired, then vanished. The silence afterward felt heavier than the gunfire. Between 0:30 and 01:30 hours on March 19th, they hit us 3 more times. Never the same angle, never the same distance. Each contact followed a pattern. 2 to 4 well-aimed shots, a short pause, faint movement detected only by sound, complete silence. They weren't testing our perimeter, they were testing our endurance. Enemy strength estimate adjusted upward, 20 to 25 fighters total, rotating teams to maintain pressure while avoiding decisive contact. We returned fire only when direction was clear. No spraying, no panic, ammunition expenditure stayed low. But discipline has a cost, and at night it drains faster than bullets. At 200 hours, I ordered limited illumination, 3 flares, 10 minutes apart. For a moment, the jungle existed again. Trees, roots, ditches, and then nothing. No bodies, no fleeing figures, no movement. They were already gone from every position they had fired from. That confirmed it. This wasn't harassment. It was planned night engagement with deliberate withdrawal. They never intended to stay past darkness. They intended to dominate it. Estimated enemy casualties, unknown, possibly none. That bothered me more than confirmed losses ever could. By 3:15 hours, contact stopped entirely. No shots, no movement, no sound. That silence told me more than gunfire ever could. Night attacks that run until dawn invite artillery airstrikes and pursuit. Smart ones end early. We had suffered 1 wounded, no fatalities. But every man looked older than he had 8 hours earlier. As I checked my watch again, I understood the truth. They would be gone before first light, and we would still be here, awake, tense, and haunted by an enemy who had already chosen the time of his disappearance. By 03:45 hours, the silence had lasted too long to be accidental. No sporadic fire, no probing shots, no movement in the undergrowth. In Vietnam, silence before dawn was never comforting. It was diagnostic. The enemy had not disengaged because they were afraid. They disengaged because their timetable was intact. Enemy estimate at this point, 25 to 30 fighters, likely a reinforced local force platoon, operating independently without heavy weapons. Light arms only, discipline high. My platoon, still 33 effectives, 1 wounded evacuated to the rear position, was fully alert but mentally drained. The night was tightening, not loosening. At 04:10 hours, they came back once. Not aggressively, not loudly. 3 shots from the eastern tree line, low angle, controlled cadence, no intent to penetrate, only to remind us they were still there. That was classic. Night fighting doctrine wasn't about winning ground, it was about owning decision-making. We returned fire with short, deliberate bursts, no pursuit, no illumination. Enemy strength in this final contact, likely one fire team, 3 to 4 men, acting as rear security for withdrawal. They wanted us alert. They wanted us stationary. They did not want us chasing shadows. By 0430 hours, the eastern sky began to soften. Not light, just contrast. And that was the danger point. For them, not us. Once dawn arrived, air support could see, artillery observers could adjust, movement became traceable. They understood that better than we did. Enemy units that survive long enough learn a single truth. Night belongs to those who leave it first. We held position. No pursuit authorized. Estimated enemy withdrawal window, 0430 to 0500 hours. They would be gone before the jungle admitted daylight. At 0505 hours, full daylight began to reveal the ground. We conducted a cautious sweep, slow, deliberate, no rush. What we found confirmed everything. Spent brass in disciplined clusters, no blood trails, no abandoned equipment, no signs of panic. Estimated enemy casualties, 0 or minimal. That wasn't failure on our part, that was success on theirs. They had come to fight the clock, not us. By 0600 hours, my men were exhausted, no sleep, one wounded, no visible enemy. On paper, it looked like nothing, but every man understood the truth without saying it. We had been contained, not engaged, controlled, not defeated. They fought us when we were weakest. They left before we could respond with strength. That night taught me something no manual ever did. The enemy didn't fear our firepower. They respected our daylight, and they owned everything in between. At 0730 hours after the sun had fully risen, I began the after-action report. On paper, the night looked almost clean. One wounded, no confirmed enemy casualties, position held, enemy disengaged. That was the lie statistics tell, because the real damage wasn't written anywhere. Night combat doesn't aim to break units. It aims to reshape how commanders think. By morning, my platoon was still intact, but our sense of control wasn't. And once a commander loses the illusion of control, the battlefield changes permanently. By doctrine, the night was supposed to favor the defender. In reality, it favored whoever understood time better. The enemy used darkness not to hide, but to edit the battlefield. They chose when contact began. They chose how long it lasted. They chose when it ended. We reacted. They scheduled. Their force, likely a reinforced local platoon, 25 to 30 men, never massed, never exposed leadership, never committed reserves. They weren't fighting for terrain. They were fighting for psychological leverage. Night stripped us of air support, visibility, confidence in distance, and once those were gone, numbers meant less than patience. Their goal was never to overrun us. It was to tempt us, a wounded man, short, sharp contacts, then silence. Every instinct in a conventional army says pursue, sweep, press the advantage. But night pursuit is how units disappear. They wanted us to chase noise, to break formation, to lose cohesion. When we didn't, they left anyway, not frustrated, satisfied, because even restraint costs energy, and energy loss is cumulative. What unsettled me wasn't what they did, it was how comfortable they were doing it. No shouting, no wasted rounds, no urgency. That level of calm only comes from repetition, which meant this wasn't an isolated tactic. It was a habit, and habits scale. If one platoon could do this to us, then 10 could do it across a province. Night by night, unit by unit, not to destroy us, but to age us faster than replacements could arrive. That night taught me something no training manual ever prepared me for. Firepower wins battles, control wins wars, and at night, we controlled almost nothing. The enemy didn't defeat us tactically. They defeated our certainty. They showed us that we could be watched without seeing, engaged without closure, held in place without being pinned. By dawn, they were gone. But the night stayed with us. At 0700 hours on March 20th, the jungle looked ordinary again. Birds returned, mist lifted, visibility stretched for hundreds of meters. By every conventional measure, the danger had passed. Yet no one relaxed. Men moved slower, voices stayed low, eyes kept drifting back toward the tree line. The night had ended, but it had rewritten how we read the day. My platoon was still at 33 effectives. Fatigue level, critical. Sleep debt, absolute. And that mattered more than enemy numbers. By mid-morning, reports filtered in from adjacent units. Different locations, same methods, short night engagements, minimal casualties. Enemy disengagement before dawn. This wasn't coincidence. It was distributed repetition. Estimated enemy strength across the area, multiple platoon-sized elements, each operating independently, each using the same doctrine. They didn't need coordination by radio, they needed shared understanding. Night after night, unit after unit, they applied the same pressure. Never enough to trigger escalation, always enough to exhaust. By 1100 hours, higher command issued guidance. Night posture would change, more defensive, less aggressive. No deep pursuit at dawn unless contact was confirmed. On paper, it was prudence. In reality, it was concession. Because every adjustment we made during the day was shaped by what we feared at night. Patrol routes shortened, movements slowed, perimeters thickened. The enemy had succeeded without holding ground. They had altered behavior. What made this tactic dangerous wasn't its violence, it was its efficiency. No heavy weapons, no logistics strain, minimal exposure. A platoon could execute it indefinitely. And because it left no dramatic battlefield result, it rarely triggered overwhelming response. No body count spike, no base overrun, no emergency reinforcement, just erosion, night by night. By evening, I understood the uncomfortable truth. We were still stronger, still better equipped, still dominant in daylight, but strength that only works half the time isn't dominance. The enemy didn't need to defeat us. They only needed to make sure we never felt safe enough to rest. And exhaustion, unlike fear, compounds. By 1830 hours, the sun dipped low enough to stretch shadows across the jungle floor. We prepared for another night, not with fear, but with resignation. Weapons checked, perimeters tightened, men positioned where doctrine said they should be. But doctrine doesn't account for memory. Every soldier remembered the previous night. Every sound now carried meaning. We weren't waiting to fight. We were waiting to endure. That night, they didn't attack. No shots, no movement, no contact. And somehow, that was worse. Because now we understood the final layer of the tactic. They didn't need to show up every night. They only needed us to expect them. Sleep came in fragments. Men startled awake at nothing. The battlefield had followed us inside our own heads. At 500 hours, dawn returned. Again, no enemy bodies, no decisive engagement, no clear win. But by then, the truth was undeniable. They had dictated when we slept, when we moved, how we planned, not with force, with timing. That was their victory. Years later, people would ask me about firefights, about ambushes, about body counts. I always told them the same thing. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who charges you, it's the one who decides when you're allowed to rest. That night in Quảng Trị taught me that war isn't just fought in hours and kilometers. It's fought in sleep cycles, nerves, and patience. They never tried to defeat us head on, they never needed to. They fought the night, they left before dawn, and they made us carry the darkness forward. That's the part no report captured, and that's why, even now, when the jungle goes quiet before sunrise, I still listen.